Hi, my name is Zach. I'm a Christian Druid, and welcome back to Reading the Bible as Mythology. Today I read Genesis chapters Genesis chapters 5 through 10. But yeah, so I'll just quickly go over what these chapters were. So chapter 5 is just a list of descendants of Adam. So that goes from Adam to Noah. So I guess just explaining how we get from there to there. I know also that genealogy was like really important to the Jewish people. So that's why that's in there. In this it talks about like how old everyone was when they died, and how old they were when they had their children and whatnot. Living an absurd number of years, most of these living over 900 years. An indication, at least in my opinion, that this is fiction. So, but yeah. So, and then chapter 6 is the story of the flood. I'd say chapter 6 through 9 is really the story of the flood, which, just to summarize, God sees that people are just really evil and wicked, and he regrets making them. That's an important thing, I think, to note. God regrets making humanity, meaning he made a mistake. Like, God changed his mind. God was like, nah, I shouldn't have done that. So the idea that God is perfect, generally we in Christianity, we have this idea that God is absolutely perfect. But just from reading, even in the beginning of the Bible here, we can see, no, God is not perfect, because God regretted a decision he made. So anyway, he decides he's going to kill everybody. He's like, I'm going to wipe the slate clean, do a complete do-over, except for Noah. He liked Noah, who had no faults. So that contradicts other scripture that we see in the Bible, which says that none are without sin. But this says that Noah had no faults. This said that there was nothing wrong with Noah. So take that how you will. But anyway, yeah, so he tells him to build a boat, tells him how big to build it, how many animals to put on it, all that stuff. We all know the story. So anyway, yeah. And the flood lasts, a long-ass time. The boat comes, eventually the waters recede enough that the boat settles down in like a mountain range somewhere. And then, he sends out a raven, and then he sends out some doves. And by the third time he sent out a dove, it doesn't come back. And he knows, okay, yeah, the water has receded enough that we can leave the boat. So they leave the boat, and he builds an altar. He offers sacrifices, which that's another thing to note too. He had, I think it was 7 pairs of each type of clean animal, which is the ones he would have sacrificed. So he had extras. He had extras in order to do sacrifices. It's at this point, after he's made the sacrifices and all this stuff, God makes the covenant with Noah, saying, I'm never going to do this again. And he hangs up his bow. And, I think this is something we can learn from the stories. Like this is God, like obviously we know that rainbows are formed from light passing through a water prism and the color being split out and whatnot. We know that that's how rainbows actually form. But this story has God putting his rainbow up in the sky, kind of like symbolizing he's putting up his bow, like an actual bow, like a war bow. He's hanging that up, and he's no longer going to war with humanity. At least that's what I'm taking from it here. But yeah, he puts that up in the sky, and he says he'll never destroy the earth with a flood again. He says he's never going to do that, and he's never going to wipe out the entirety the earth. Says he's never going to do that again. I think, at least I kind of got the sense from it that God regretted doing that as well. Like he regretted making human beings, and then he wiped them all out, and then he regretted wiping them all out. I think he maybe realized, oh, that was a bit drastic. I regret doing that. I'm never going to do it again. I promise. So, yeah. So yeah, that's, I mean, pretty much sums up that story. I think the questions that this is answering, the things it's trying to explain, I mean, obviously it's explaining where rainbows come from. It's, well, I'm not sure what else it's explaining, actually. I know we get into here in chapter 10, it talks about the descendants of Noah. I went ahead and read that chapter. I was going to stop at chapter 9, but chapter 10 has the descendants of Noah, and then chapter 11 starts the story of the Tower of Babylon. So I figured I might as well end off the story, and I just really quickly read through the descendants of Noah. And, and that explains like where different people groups come from and whatnot. I'm not really going to go over all of that because it's a lot. The whole chapter is nothing but that. But yeah, like, that's just another descendants list. Talks about where certain people groups come from, yada, yada, yada. But yeah, I think the main things really I get out of this is that, God is not perfect. God regrets certain things, which, personally, I find to be true. I think that, I don't think that, whatever being or beings created the universe, would be perfect. Because if they were perfect, why create? Like, in all honesty, like if they were perfect and they're like perfectly happy just existing, then there would be no need for change. So if God had been perfect and and they always existed, then why create? There would be no need to create because God was perfect. And change, like, if you then go and change, well, you're either becoming imperfect or you weren't perfect to begin with. So, yeah, that's my main takeaway from this. God's not perfect. I guess, yeah. And then there was some stuff here with Noah and his sons, where I think it was Ham, his son Ham, who found Noah naked in his tent after he'd, drank a bunch of wine and then got drunk. And then he went and like told his brothers, like, "Hey, Dad's naked." And his two other sons, being much more respectful, took a blanket, and walked backwards with it over their shoulders. Didn't look at their dad, and they covered him up so that way he wasn't exposed to everybody. And then when Noah sobered up, he was really mad at Ham, and for some reason, instead of cursing Ham, he curses his son, Canaan, and he says, "Cursed be Canaan." And I think, like, obviously at the time, the people who would have written this were enemies with certain people. I believe is probably why they had that, because there was like a land of Canaan, and they had the Canaanites, the people that they fought against and whatnot. And so, giving an excuse, I guess, really for, why these people are evil and why they're bad or whatnot, justifying that view. That is, at least, again, that's what I'm getting out of just reading this text. not really doing any other, having not really done a whole lot of study into all of that. I probably should, but yeah, at least that's what I can figure. That's what I can reckon with that. Um, so yeah, I think very interesting story. But yeah, I think again, summarizing again, main things we learn: God's not perfect. God has regrets, just like us, and God was willing to apologize and say, "Hey, yeah, I'm sorry I did that. I'm not going to do it again." And we see, changed behavior because God doesn't destroy the earth with water. Oh yeah, there was another thing I just remembered in here. He had a whole thing about saying that people are the image of God, and if anyone kills them, then those people will be killed by other people. Which I mean, I think they said if anyone murders anyone, then they'll be killed by other people. So you kind of get around the loophole of like they're not murdering them; they're just avenging their deaths or something like that. But yeah, I don't know. That was just something I remember reading in here. So yeah. So yeah, interesting. A lot more reading today because I just wanted to complete the story and not kind of leave it hanging there, especially since it's not really that much to read. So yeah, I will be later on starting on with Genesis chapter 11. So anyway, I hope that you enjoyed my thoughts on these chapters in Genesis.